Jenny Ingram.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good. I've not seen you in a while, and how fun to be talking now about this.
Yes.
We have known each other for over a decade
Yeah, for a really long time.
through the
Yay,
blogging
internet.
world. I
Yep.
know. And did you ever think we'd be sitting here talking about books?
No, it's a dream come true,
It
right?
is. It kind
Yeah,
of is.
yeah.
Okay, I have to ask you this because we never had this discussion. I mean, did you always want to write a book? Like as you were blogging and all of that, was that a goal or how did this come about?
I don't know if it was a goal as much as kind of a dream that
Yeah.
I kind of put out there a little bit, but I don't know if you relate to this. It's kind of like you wonder if your words really are that meaningful to
Oh,
anybody
yeah.
else. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm just trying to get by. So
Uh-huh.
what would I have to say that would be of any benefit to bind onto some pages? And
Well, and I love the fact that, I mean, we're all mommy bloggers if we have children, right? You're automatically put in that niche.
yeah,
But you were a humor writer, humor blogger,
yeah.
and your book it's got some levity, but it's also a little bit more serious than your online writing.
Yes, it was definitely a little bit of stepping outside of my comfort zone because
Yeah.
I have faith and I've shared about it some, but I haven't just, laid it all out there necessarily.
Yeah.
So
And I
this
love
is about.
the title is so fun, Adulting for Christians. But I think you and we kind of have that in common. I think neither of us were seen as like a faith blogger.
Right.
We both had audiences of people who were maybe not. Um, so how did it feel to kind of move more into a book that was more addressing, Christian audience?
It was actually it was something that I feel like it kind of came about as a surprise because it was more
Mm-hmm.
pitched to me than me
Uh-huh.
pitching it. But I had been kind of working on a little devotionally sort of thing on my own, like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I'll self-publish something. So I've been kind of shifting, and I think in this world environment where we kind of go to or come where we go to for comfort and hard
Mm-hmm.
times, I've been kind of going to some Bible stuff.
Yeah.
And so when this opportunity came up, I felt like, oh, this feels like a really good time because I've been digging in
Yeah.
there more and
Yeah.
kind of shifting and becoming a little more, I don't know, I think maybe I was a little lighthearted about it all before,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt the need to dig in deeper. So it was good timing as
That's
far as
cool.
where my heart was going and what it was
Yeah.
needing. And I have teenagers and
Yes.
a kid who's off and being an adulting, so it was easy to
Yes.
tap into all the advice I've been throwing at them. So
Well, yeah, I am, a step, like just a small step behind you on the parenting journey.
just
So
small,
I'm
no,
just
yeah,
going to throw this book at each of them.
good.
Here.
Well, and something I did want to say, the title can, it's in your face. Adulting for Christians.
Yes.
It's it was really written more. Not. I think the word Christian gets an interesting rap at times, and it was really written more for encouragement
Yeah,
for the kids. And one of my
absolutely.
friends' kid who read it, she's 21, and she told her mom, she said, I really like that. I don't feel like I have to do this or like she's telling me what to do, but
Hmm.
and that was, and these kids get a lot of that. So there's
Yeah,
ideas that it's not like, hey, you have to do this, but
yeah,
hey, have you thought about it? And so,
yes.
as,
It's
yeah,
very approachable and
I
not
hope
preachy.
so.
Well, like you're going to be
Yeah.
preachy. I mean, that's not even in your, you know.
Well,
So,
I can be.
well, sure.
In
But
one of my
generally,
Facebook community groups, I just got a little bit preachy, not Bible preachy, but it's about graduation stuff, and everybody's so discontent. And I'm like, okay,
oh
well,
gosh, it's tough.
anywho, yeah,
Anywho, well, what was the date that your book launched?
March 31st.
Oh, fun. What a fun launch date. What a fun
Yeah.
launch date.
That was
So,
good times.
surprise, 2 weeks into lockdown.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, at least people are more available to read.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Yes. But yeah, I think it's not like anything any of us planned
No.
launching books right now. All right. Well, will you read us a little section of your book?
Sure, I will read a little section of my book. And something also about the book is there's like, it's like a journal too. And so reading a section, there's lots of
It's
places
interactive.
to interact.
Yeah.
It's interactive. So
I love that.
this is the section about valuing yourself. So the verse at the top, I will praise thee for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And then I go on, and that's Psalm 139:14. Hey. Then I go on to say, you are valuable, period. Value yourself does not mean being an arrogant jerk. Valuing yourself is receiving the compliment. It's recognizing you, your time, your heart, your gifts, your being. You are a vital piece of this crazy puzzle of life. Valuing yourself means accepting that only the raddest things from God's hands, including you. How does this play out in real life? It's okay to turn down opportunities. Ask yourself, is this really an opportunity, or am I just hungry, desperate, or insecure? Remember boundary setting, and then I refer to chapter 4. Setting boundaries is the pro-legit way to exercise the practice of valuing yourself. Comparison. Don't compare your beginnings to someone else's middle. That was from Tim Hiller, Strive, Life is Short, Pursue What Matters. So there's references to verses in other books too. And then get out of your own head. Memorize this verse from 2 Timothy 1:7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. So, and then there's a journaling page to follow that up.
I love that. I love one thing that I really love that you are talking about in this book is value, because I think in certain, maybe more toxic Christian circles, and certainly in the circles I was raised in, our value wasn't always emphasized. Sometimes our sin was more emphasized, right? Like, you're a sinner, you need grace, you are nothing without God. And while that may be theologically true, when you hear those messages over and over, you kind of start to feel like, well, I guess I am a wretch. I guess I am so what made you think, like, I really want to dive into value as opposed to reminding people of their sinfulness? Or,
well, I think we're always being reminded of how terrible we are. I mean, just social media, and like with my son in particular, as just watching him and seeing the struggles that he's had from the words that older people are telling them, and just the world that's coming in. I think, and with even worship at church, the songs are like, I need you, and it's true, but we also are like created from this really cool God who has really blessed us with some great stuff. And I don't think that gets focused on. And another reason why I really wanted to focus on that is just knowing the stress that the young adults have already. Like one of the crises of my son was like, I'm so lost, I'm so afraid. And I think those positive words need to be spoken to them. And they need to hear that. They need to hear that. They really do. As arrogant and, whatever that people might say because they're young and, they're entering this really scary time as young adults. So many unknowns. And particularly when I wrote this, there wasn't a pandemic.
Oh my gosh. They didn't have their graduations canceled yet, or
And so I think they need to hear good words.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny you were mentioning like how in so many worship songs or in a church experience, we are kind of reminded of like, I'm nothing without God. But, I do sometimes wonder what God is thinking of some of our lyrics, because I had this experience the other day where I was talking to one of my kids and she'd gotten in a lot of trouble and she was kind of in that shame spiral, and she was like, I'm just an idiot. Like, I'm just an idiot. And I remember telling her, I said, I really take offense at that, because if someone outside the family called you an idiot, I would be fighting with them. So I don't like you to call yourself an idiot either. Like that is offensive to me,
Right.
because you're not an idiot, and I love you, and I wonder sometimes if God isn't looking down and being like, guys, like,
Yeah.
cool it on the I'm an idiot talk, or cool it on the like, like, I created you in my image.
Yeah.
Maybe you could stop self-flagellating yourself.
Yes. Exactly. Yep. 100%.
Like, I think he's like, that's not what I meant, guys.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, but come on, I did a really good job.
Yes.
Give me some credit.
Yes. Well, as you were reading, I decided to change the passage I was going to read, because I was going to read, actually, I was going to read something about, I don't know, that Christian tendency of like looking when we're in a mess, or when we're in the struggle, looking to find the testimony before it's time, that thing.
Yes.
Where, we're still in pain, or we're still in grief, but we're already going like, well, God's going to use it to his glory, but we're just kind of saying that because we're not comfortable with just being like, yeah, this is really painful.
We really hope that's going to be the case.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
when it's like, no, there's really no bow here. This is just objectively awful with no happy ending. But anyway, I decided I actually wanted to read instead, a little passage from the chapter where I talk about my divorce, but I talk about what led me to, getting married too early, because I got married. I met my ex-husband when I was 19, and I got married when I was 21, in the middle of junior and senior year of college, which I don't recommend. But
Yeah.
but I think that I did that out of some shame, out of not feeling the value that you're talking about. So I'll read that a little bit, because I think it's a little outgrowth of this conversation. It's hard to explain why I was so keen to get married quickly out of high school, to a pastor no less, unless you've grown up in the particular brand of conservative Christianity I was raised in. Christianity was not about a relationship with the God of the universe. It was not about modeling your life after Jesus through service to the poor or advocacy for the oppressed. It was about rules. It was a club with members who didn't do a specific list of things, namely drinking, smoking, cussing, drugs, and sex. By the time I left high school, despite my earlier promises to myself and the group around the campfire at church camp, I had engaged in all of those behaviors. I was a classic pastor's daughter stereotype. I showed up to church every Sunday, but I was a party girl on Friday and Saturday night. After a childhood in which I was pushed to perform, to pretend, and to appear perfect, with a bit of religious guilt sprinkled on top for good measure, I fractured under the weight of the rules. At church, we were taught that we were undeserving sinners who were saved by the grace of God. The emphasis was always on the undeserving part, and I felt that keenly. I took communion every Sunday and thought of the things I had done wrong that week, flagellating myself for being such a piece of shit, rather than seeing communion as a time to meditate in the presence of a loving God. I saw it as a time to beat myself up over how unworthy I was. I spent most of my teen years living in a state of turmoil about my faith and wallowing in guilt and shame. And then in the book, I go on to talk about how I feel like coming into young adulthood with those kinds of views about myself, and I talk about how I remember those metaphors in youth group of like, you're a chewed up piece of chewing gum if you've had sex before marriage or something like that. Right. I felt like I needed to be externally connected to like a religious figure in order to be okay, if that makes sense. Like, I wanted to marry a pastor because I thought, well, now I'm like a really good Christian.
Right. Made up for everything.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
nothing to see here. I'm a pastor's wife. I'm good now. It just, I do. I think I just wanted that redemption through someone
Mm,
else, through the optics of appearance, outward appearance,
sure.
instead of doing the inner work of like, maybe I am worthy.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It's, I think we do a lot of things to help make up for shame,
Hmm.
guilt,
Yeah.
um, whether it's warranted or not. Not that
Yeah.
shame is, but yeah, we do a lot of things that really have a long tail effect
Hmm.
on our lives
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, yeah, which is why I feel like I'm working so hard with my kids on worthiness and
Hmm.
self-esteem and not in like a I don't know, I think there's a false idea of self-esteem, which is that we just tell our kids like you're amazing and
Yes.
perfect. Those
Yes.
moms?
Oh, yes. Well, we see it like on American Idol, the parents who are just so
Totally.
excited for their kid to
Yeah.
be up there, and it's like, ooh, yeah, not that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm working on like grounded self-esteem,
Hmm.
like I have like a self-esteem that says I have a good view of my strengths and weaknesses. you know
Yes.
like I am not a snowflake who
Right.
is I am not the angel that my mother thinks that because we all know those parents, right? The ones that are like my child would never.
Oh my gosh. And I really don't want to be that one. I'm sure I've been that one on some level, but yeah, kids are kids, and
Kids are kids, they're gonna do dumb stuff,
yeah.
all
I
of them,
have to
right?
say, can I bring up a part of your book
Yeah.
that was, so I just got it yesterday.
uh,
So I've been flipping through it, and so the one that caught my eye were the breathing and other abuses the
oh
teenagers.
yes,
I
yes.
loved it, such as making eye contact and breathing or
Yeah.
dressing too young, the dressing. Anyways, I loved your, and I'm like, yep, that's that. That's that. Trying to take their photo was the first thing that came to mind. It's so
Oh.
funny because I set up a separate family Instagram account, which just nobody else can follow it, just
Oh.
us. And so sometimes I'm like, I said, this one is just going to that. And that's really the only way I can get it back.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes, because they like
Uh-huh.
the little, I make a little book, like order it online through the Instagram or whatever. Anyways,
Yes.
and so they like seeing the pictures later, but they don't like
Yes.
it going out to the population of America and beyond.
Yeah, and I'm curious to talk to you about that too, because we were kind of, OG mom bloggers, and now our kids are growing up and how do your kids conceptualize and feel about this whole phenomena of their childhood being, somewhat narrated online?
Yeah, I don't think so. We live in a pretty small town,
Yeah.
so in some on some level, they've kind of benefited from a small town
Yeah.
favorable view because I haven't
Yeah.
been super controversial,
Yes.
which maybe I am now. I have a book with, but so they haven't minded, but definitely as they've gotten older, they there are some restrictions with sharing. And as they've gotten older, I've also made some decisions not to
Hmm.
share, even though they have said, oh, yeah, no problem. I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I think it might be. So I'm just not going to. So I think because they've grown up with it a
Yeah.
bit, they're unlike other kids who might be stepping into it later. So they've been along for the ride and have benefited a little
Yeah.
bit. But they definitely have boundaries and wishes that
Yeah.
I do listen to. And that's been actually hard, and why this book has been a great crossover. And I kind of
Hmm.
started a little podcast too, which is not fully off the ground, centered around parenting teenagers. And it's more just kind of
Oh gosh.
the lamenting and the, hey, this is what we're dealing with, so making that transition from being a mommy blogger, still being a mom, but they're growing up, and how do you transition your whole business
Yeah.
around little people? And I'm not going to start over.
No, I know. Isn't it funny? We're all just pivoting. We're like, okay, I'll do a podcast now. Okay, I'll write a book now. Like, where is all of this going? And I'll follow.
Yeah, yeah.
But
How
yeah,
about you?
well, I mean, I think it's interesting and it's similar to what you said. It's like, it's one thing when you're talking about kids that are having universal things like a diaper blowout or a toddler meltdown. Every single child will do that. And so when you write about that, it's not like you're telling on, revealing something about your child. You're not
Right,
disclosing private information.
right.
I think we could reasonably assume that every child has had most of the things that we were talking about happen to them. And I found that, around age 10 or 11, that was when it was like, now the stories that are happening are more private. Like now it feels like this is specific to this kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we're dealing with ADD or we're dealing with anxiety or we're dealing with, challenges at school. And then it just started to feel like this is not me sharing my story of motherhood anymore. It's like if I'm
Right.
telling their stories, I'm really sharing them. And so I, like you, I really did pull back and I really just tried to focus on my experience. I
Right.
mean, which there's plenty to talk about there, just identity and, those kinds of topics. But yeah, and my kids are funny. They don't get this whole thing. Like I think they, like you said, they grew up with it. So I think my kids think that every mom writes a blog and then goes on to write a book. Like
Yeah.
I even had to tell them, I'm like, I know that a lot of my friends, most of my friends have written a book, but it's kind of a big deal. Like, you know, like I just
Yeah.
want you to know that that's just because I happen to have writer friends. But
Doesn't mean it's the norm.
yeah, they're just like, oh, whatever. Oh, cool. You wrote a book like everyone else. No concept.
No, yeah. Well, and also with teenagers and kids, have you noticed? I don't know. Maybe it's just mine and their friend group, but they don't actually post. Well, they don't. I hardly ever post on Facebook, and
Yeah.
even their Instagram is very minimal. They feel like if
Yes.
they do more than one a month, they're spamming people, and that's why
Yes.
they set up their spam accounts. But they're also being raised in where everything disappears. The
Yes.
stories and Snapchat and
Yes.
all that. So they're not creating stuff that's really meaning to define a brand or define
Yes.
their square look
It is, their internet behavior is so different than ours, isn't
Yeah.
it? And I also find they really don't care about the quality of the photo. Like,
No.
it's almost like there's an aesthetic of making it look like it's blurry or grainy or washed out with a flash. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like on purpose. And then, yeah, my kids will do the same where like they'll post something and then they'll delete it off Instagram.
Yeah.
So there's one picture at a time. I'm like, where did all your other photos go? I don't understand. I don't understand the strategy here.
I don't either. We've spent our whole careers on things that last.
Yes.
SEO and
Yeah.
suddenly just things disappear.
They
and
want
they're
one
gone.
photo. They want a photo. And I'm like, I can't help being like, you're gonna regret this. Like, you're gonna regret deleting it. Like, it's nice to have later when you have all these old
Yeah.
photos. And
I look back and reminisce.
oh my gosh. Oh, and I don't know if you did this. I had saved the handles for all my kids' names
Oh, you were smart.
way back in the day.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, I don't want somebody to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that they would have, but
You never know. There's a lot of names out there these days.
I know. Well, there's many Kembe Howertons
Sure.
because Haitian names with English last names is very common.
Sure.
But I would, because I had their handles, I would seed them with like cute photos of them.
Oh, yeah.
Like once in a while, I'd be like, I'm going to put this on Kembe's account. And so they had accounts that no one followed. But, so as I turn the accounts over to them, they're just like, I have all these baby pictures on my Instagram. Like, and they're just mortified.
They are, yeah. I
I'm
just
like,
can't please them.
I know, and I'm like, it's a beautiful, like, narrative of your life. And they're like, can you take these off? Oh my gosh. Well, talk to me about, I love that you talk about boundaries in your book. Boundaries are, I'm a former therapist and I love me some boundaries. I love the idea, not always great at it.
Same. They're much easier to say than do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, did you feel that as you were writing the book? Was there a part of you that's like, I'm writing this a little bit for myself?
Oh, well, that's a thing. Yeah, I was flipping through it just the other day, and I'm like, oh, I actually could be reading this right now. And it's funny, you spend so much time writing this thing, and it's funny how quickly you forget. I'm like, what is even in here?
Same.
I'm like, you're so deep, and it's all your life, and then suddenly I don't remember a thing about it. So as I was flipping through, I have a section about taxes, and because my husband and we got off on the wrong foot back in our early 20s. And so that's still, I think we're off of that path, but it follows you for a really long time because you can't dig out. So, there's several sections in here that I think, you kind of get away from some things and boundaries, or even just having healthy relationships. I talk about that a little bit in there too. It's a lifelong journey to resolve conflict.
Yeah. And I love that your book is really talking about, it's like all those things when you sit down with another group of moms or even adults and go like, why aren't they teaching this in school? Why aren't they teaching this in school? Like, why don't we learn conflict resolution in school? Or why don't we learn to do our taxes? And so I love that you've kind of written the book where you're like, here's all the stuff you maybe should have been taught. Yeah.
Actually, I have a friend who's a teacher, and he teaches in a public school, but he's using a little bit.
I love that.
From it, because part of his social studies is about, it's an adulting quarter chapter, whatever it is. And so he mentioned, I love it, that he was using, but I do think that more schools need to be teaching some of this stuff, especially as we have like a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
I think we have a lot of that. People are getting so creative, and I think discovering and understanding how that works just on a practical level.
Yes.
Getting started on the right foot is so important. Just speaking from bookkeeping.
Yeah, totally.
Bookkeeping, because it's awful.
It's so awful. I mean, I even feel like, because I'm sure this was the same for you. Like, when you started blogging, did you ever think like, oh, this might be a business? No. Yeah.
No way.
Never. I never thought that. So then it's like, fast forward 10 years and it's like, oh, this is like actually a business. And it's like, I don't know how to write an invoice. I don't know how to keep any books. Yeah. Like you find yourself thrust into like, oh, I'm a business owner. I don't know how to turn in things for employees or anything.
Right. Yep.
So many
quarterlies or whatever, what your state versus your city versus the federal government. There's so many little pieces.
Well, I'm still confused. I probably need to read your book and refresh myself.
Do you need another one? I can send it to you.
No, I do though. I love all of the practical advice you're giving, and it isn't just for young adults. I don't think. I mean, it is a life manual.
Yeah, thank you. I think it can be used that way. I've also had a couple families say that they use it, they read it together. Yeah. They like kind of do a dinner time or, evenings, they kind of go through it. I
love that.
And
I think I'm going to do that.
I haven't given my book to my kids. So I'm thinking maybe that's what I need to do.
Okay. Have they not read the book?
Not really. It's been a crazy time. And with things that happened, I actually didn't even get my copy until like a week before.
I know. Isn't that weird?
Too. Yeah. And so then it was, online school, and we're at home and everybody says we have all this time, but it felt like We
Oh,
didn't.
no.
So I've just been in survival, and
Same.
and my daughter's graduating. So,
Yeah.
this week is graduation. And so she actually just this morning was like, "Hey mom, I haven't read your book." And I said, "I know, I have one for you."
Isn't
So,
that funny?
I think I'd love to walk through it with my kids a
Yeah.
little bit too. And my
Yeah.
son is home during this time. He was living in LA, kind of near you.
Oh, really?
Uh, and he was living in a co-living
Oh, cool.
community. So there were about 58 people in his house.
So that
So
doesn't sound ideal for a quarantine.
no. So he just came home for a little
Yeah.
bit, and he's working, through the cloud. But,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I could do it with all my kids, and they could tell me how terrible or great it is.
Well,
So
I mean,
yeah,
aren't they just going to think it's lame no matter what? Like my kids are
yeah.
just like, I read my daughter the dedication in the book to
Yeah.
her. I read it out loud, and she goes, "Mom, get a life." It's like, thank you.
When we're gone, then it will be, they're our age, they will get it. But we have to wait a really long time for that payoff.
Well,
We
I
may
just
not
feel
even
like
see it.
it's like that Bible verse, like a prophet has no honor in his hometown. It's like a mother has no honor in her home.
No.
None.
I love that. Yes, it's so true.
Well, even when you were talking about the chapter on teens and how they think everything is so uncool. I mean, do you ever feel sometimes like defensive, like, I'm not that bad. Like, I know I'm
Yeah.
lame, but like on the continuum of mothers my age, I'm kind of cool.
I kind of do okay, and it's
Yeah,
really not as bad as you think. But then
right. Like,
here's what was interesting when my son came home a couple months ago. So my girls are 15 and just 18, and he's almost 21. He went to do something, and my girls were like, "Oh, you're too old."
oh my gosh, that's
So
really
it
funny.
happens, and he's like, "You know what? I kind of feel like I am," and
That's funny.
and so it happens quickly.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
but I
Uh,
still think we're pretty cool. So I'm
I
gonna
think
keep
we
doing
are
it. I don't
too.
even care. I was doing all that stuff before they were throwing out the
Totally.
words.
Plus, I'm
So
like, guys, there's moms at the school that show up in pajamas to pick their kids up. Like, I am dressed and wearing clothes from Urban Outfitters, so shut up.
yeah, I have to say I got dressed for you today.
Oh, I definitely got dressed for you
Earrings and
today.
makeup on and everything.
Oh, if we were not doing this, I would still be in my pajamas. And I put a hat on to hide the grease on my head.
Well, it's a cute hat.
Well, thank
It
you.
works. It
Thank
works.
you. I love hats because they make you look like you tried when really,
Yeah, it feels like a fashion statement, not a
yes.
cover up.
Although it's funny, actually, I was talking with my boyfriend yesterday about the fact that we made these like hat hooks in my room for my
Oh, yeah.
hats. And we did that literally the weekend before the quarantine started. Because I do wear hats a ton. Like,
Sure.
school pickup, I don't want to wash my hair. I always
Right.
throw a hat on. And I was just saying yesterday, I'm like, I have not worn one of those hats since we made that because I don't leave the house. So it's like we made this big wall to store my hats, and then my hat habit really reduced when I was just alone in my house for
Yeah,
2 months.
you just don't need to do it
Didn't need a hat
Yeah.
or clothes or
until today.
pants until
Or
today.
pants. No, I'm wearing jeans too.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to go all out.
Jeans. I mean, I don't remember those.
No.
Does it feel very restricting? Are you like, oh, I want my pajamas back on?
A little bit because they're Spanx jeans,
Oh, yeah.
and I had to go up in the special bucket up in my closet. I'm like, where are my jeans? I do have my overall jeans, but those are different.
Yes, those are different.
Yeah.
All right. Well, your book is available everywhere books are sold. And where can people find you online?
Oh, JennyOnTheSpot.com,
Yep.
and I'm Jenny on the
Jenny
Spot.
on the Spot on Insta.
Insta, the Jenny on the Spot on Facebook, because some lady somewhere way before you could.
Oh, that Jenny.
I know.
The other Jenny.
She was way more on the spot than I was.
I guess so. Well, thank you
So,
so much for chatting. It was
yeah,
really,
thank
really
you.
fun.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's
All right.
awesome. Okay.
Talk to you
We'll talk
soon.
soon. Okay. Bye.